Hey folks, I'm here with Richard Braine outside Parliament on the last day of the session. Richard, how bad is it?
Well, it does look a little bit bleak. Hopefully, the Remainers in our Parliament will not succeed in their effort to stop Brexit again. And hopefully, our Prime Minister and his team have got some good tricks up their sleeve. There's talk of this issue of the Queen's consent and the royal assent being two different things, and possibly there is a chance that the government has the right, through the Queen's consent, not to pass or not to allow the bill to continue. Maybe they'll play that card. I'd be very thrilled if they do manage to pull that off.
I'm very, very dubious. I mean, it seems that Boris is between a rock and a hard place. What manoeuvring room does he actually have here, apart from that? Is there anything?
Well, he is Prime Minister and they are the government and they do have some strong powers. There's also talk of this 2004 bill that Tony Blair put through, the Civil Contingencies Act, where the Prime Minister does, under the law, have the right to more or less declare a state of emergency. And, you could argue that we are in a state of emergency because the will of the people of this country is being blocked by our Parliament. And perhaps that is emergency, and perhaps Boris will choose that law as a means to try to stop Parliament blocking Brexit again. And if they take those powers, he does have extraordinary powers. The Act itself is a disgrace. It really shouldn't exist.
But it's there.
The best thing would be if it was used once and then repealed as soon as possible once it's been used, to ensure that the people of this country get what they voted for.
So, when it comes to Boris saying that he'd rather be dead in a ditch than extend the Article 50 request, do you think that's genuine?
Yes, I mean I thoroughly agree with it. I think it's a noble thing to say, and I'm right behind him with that. I would rather be dead in a ditch than see this country progress and continue in the European Union. People don't talk about what it means to remain and to continue in the EU, but in fact, very likely in the longer term, over a few years, it will mean the EU having control of taxation, direct taxation. It will mean probably the end of the monarchy. It will mean probably the end of the pound, and we will slide ever further into this colonial status of being a region of a really anti-democratic imperial structure. And it is imperial. It is an effort to build a Napoleonic empire again in Europe, and that urge has always been there in Europe, and this country has a noble tradition of having stopped on many occasions the effort to build a totalitarian empire in Europe, and we should be very proud of our history of stopping that happening and trying to ensure that the nations of Europe do enjoy real democracy.
I mean, it's obviously expansionist. It's constantly trying to have new members accede to the Union, even speculating on Turkey, which is a European country in name only, I would say.
Yes.
So,
well, that's right, and I think that what people don't talk about is the damage that has already been done to European nations by this effort to really, I think, in many ways, destroy the political and cultural diversity of Europe by homogenizing Europe into one European nation. It's obvious, I think, that the majority of the peoples of European nations don't want that to happen, but the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels do want it. Of course they do. It gives them supreme power, and we don't want that.
it's also very convenient for the bureaucrats to have everything laid out in codified tables, that it's all homogenous. It's very, very simple for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes their position, absolutely solid and unassailable. It means that they really have extraordinary power, very little accountability. You have zero laws proposed and debated in the elected European Parliament. You have zero votes from the people for the commissioners who really have the power to legislate and be an executive. And of course we've seen zero EU laws rejected by the British Parliament. So at no point anywhere in those three zeros do you see a real democratic process.
And not only that, if it comes to referenda, which it has done many times across the European continent, if the public vote the wrong way, they'll be forced to vote again, which is what the Lib Dems are currently pressing for here, isn't it?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And it's a very important point that our own membership of the EU is on very, very shaky ground constitutionally and legally, because our laws should have stopped us joining. I think there is no question in my mind that Edward Heath really betrayed the laws and the constitution of this country by taking us in originally without consulting the people before he did it. And then if you look at France in 2005 voting against the constitution of the European Union, they simply changed the name of it. They kept 99% of the text of it the same, and then took it back to the French Parliament. And in 2007, the French Parliament passed it, even though they knew that the people had very recently voted against it. So that's one of the reasons why, when we won this referendum, I still thought that it was an early skirmish, and that it would take us probably at least a decade to really get clear, because we've seen how difficult it has been for countries like Ireland and France and the Netherlands to stand up against this great juggernaut of this great steamroller of bringing Europe together into one country and frankly a non-democratic country. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So the thing is, I can't help but feel that this is not the end of the battle. If at the end of the war, assuming that Boris somehow manages to get us out on Halloween, it's not like the Remainers are going to say, well, there we go, that was fair. We'll carry on with our lives now, aren't they?
Oh, I'm quite certain that the Nick Cleggs and Dominic Greaves and Amber Rudds will continue, and Roland Rudds will continue to try to take us back in. I'm pretty sure that it was Theresa May's intention over the last 3 years to keep Britain in a situation where we could easily go back in as soon as they had managed to manipulate the mood. But their failure to manipulate the British people over the last 3 years gives me great optimism. I think that even if our Parliament, our rogue Parliament, manages to obstruct us really leaving the EU, I think that British people will be incensed, and more people, even people who voted Remain, will see that we aren't really in a democracy, we're in a tyranny. They are telling us how things are going to be, and they don't care what we think, and our votes really matter very little to them. So I have optimism that we will not give up this quest as a country or a people, and they may delay things till January if they are successful, but it won't make any difference, because come January I think even more people in this country will want to leave, and leaving will become a more pressing issue as more time goes by.
Well, I hope so. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Carl.
Cheers.